Well, there may be a 2 week international break on the way, but before that, we've got a thrilling weekend of EFL Championship action. The running continues with Matchweek 38, and boy, has it tightened up in both the playoff race, the top three race, and of course at the bottom as well. We're looking forward to all of those. We're going to preview and predict all 12 matches this weekend. And of course, as always, we'll encourage you to do the same in the comments below. Give us your score predictions for Matchweek 38. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in a couple of weeks' time when we return in the second Wednesday of the international break to look ahead to the weekend fixture list in the EFL Championship. Before we go and look ahead to match week 38 though, we've got to go back to midweek. A very surprising midweek again. Lots of shock scorelines as we head towards the end of the season. And I managed to pick up 8 points overall. A perfect score on both nights, albeit the first one on Tuesday night came pretty late on with Bristol City's equaliser at the Blades, and then Leeds United winning 2-0 against Millwall, as well as correct outcomes for Sheffield Wednesday's big comeback and for Hull's one against Oxford in that big game at the bottom on Wednesday. So 8 points for me. It was generally a very low scoring match week, but there are 4 of you above me and 3 level on 8 points. Those of you are Mike, Bobby and Mick, so well done to all of you. 8 points in addition to my score. On 9, one above us in joint third, Akshay and Mello, 2 of our regular players. In second place, the first in double figures and a return to form for a man who's usually Mr. Consistent in our comment section. Steve is on 10. And top of the tree, a regular in Chris, 12 points and a big shout out. You trusted the Championship's favourite scoreline, and what a week to do it. 3 perfect scores, all 1-1 draws. You called every single one of the midweek 1-1s. Well done to you. You are a deserving winner of match week 37. And now, can you replicate it? It's match week 38 and we start on Friday night with a huge game in the race for the playoffs. It is 7th v 12th as Bristol City host Norwich City. And it was 2 of the informed teams in the last few games. Bristol City, 3-1 draws in their last 6, but they'll be pretty pleased with the one at Sheffield United, I think. Given the fact they were going into stoppage time at 1-0 down, it looked like it was going to be a frustrating defeat. Certainly a good result for them in the end. Mark Sykes with that 90th minute goal, and that leaves them in a pretty good position in their playoff chase as well. It was a really good performance too. They probably had more of the chances in the game. To have over 20 shots at Sheffield United is a cracking effort, but the fact they dominated the ball, they created chances too. They could have produced those sort of performances against Hull and Cardiff. They might have been right up and secure in that top 6 for now. As it is, they come up against the Norwich side who will sort of look like they were cruising to victory against Sheffield Wednesday. They were 2 up at half-time. They were 2 up at the hour mark. But what on earth happened in that last half an hour? The soft underbelly came in. And I know we talked about the fact that maybe David Wagner's football was a little bit boring for some last year. It was pragmatic. He was protecting a Norwich defence. His attacking football had to be put by the wayside, and we're starting to see why. Norwich are dropping some really poor points. They've conceded over 50 goals this year now. In that second half, it was a bit of a blitz, unfortunately. It does put Norwich in a difficult position where if they want to challenge for the playoffs again, it's must-win territory. And while they had been unbeaten in 4 prior to that, 3 of them had been 1-1 draws. And my question is, do I go for the Championship's favourite scoreline based on the fact that both of these teams love a 1-1? Or do I trust that Norwich's away form will let them down again and Bristol City will find a way against a slightly poorer defence? I'm going to start trusting Bristol City. I got a perfect score for them in midweek, and maybe they'll start to score more late goals. I'm going to go for Bristol City to edge this one by 2-1 at Ashton Gate. On to Saturday, and just 2 early kickoffs this time, starting with Millwall versus Stoke City. Stoke got a priceless win against Blackburn on Wednesday night after that crushing defeat at Coventry. A really important victory in a far less impressive performance, you would argue, but they did enough. They defended with some element of discipline, something they didn't do against Coventry. And look, they took one of the 2 great chances they had, so you've got to give them credit for that. It's a big win for Mark Robins' side. Just keeps that gap after Derby, Luton and Plymouth all won in midweek. For Millwall, a pretty inevitable 2-0 defeat at Leeds, but if you'd have taken those 2 away games in the week, I think they'd have been thrilled with 3 points. Obviously didn't start well, they stayed in the game, but we've talked about it a lot. It's one of the things Alex Neil will have to work on next year. They've scored less than a goal a game all season. They've not really had much of an attacking threat, and they didn't even manage a shot on target at Leeds. They restricted them to largely half chances, which is better than a lot of teams have done at Ellen Road, but going forward, Millwall have got to add quality next year because that's the difference between mid-table and the playoff push. So for this game, I do think Stoke's away form will let them down. They let in 4 at Norwich, 3 at Coventry. Defensively, they're a bit of a mess on the road. They've picked up a big win in midweek. It was a huge effort. I don't think they can replicate it. Millwall very rarely score more than 1 in a game. So I'm going to go for a boring result, a 1-0 Millwall win. And the second early kickoff features the side that Millwall lost to in midweek. It is Leeds United travelling to QPR. Queen's Park Rangers beaten by Middlesbrough, their 4th successive defeat. Yes, 3 of them against sides up in the top 8. So not going to take too much pain from it, but maybe just got to have a little look over their shoulder with a 9-point distance. Probably just need one more win to make themselves feel comfortable. They did stay in the game late on with that Steve Cook goal, but we mentioned it so many times this season. QPR don't have a cutting edge, and if their defensive form does start to go, even if they're only conceding 1 or 2 a game as they are at the minute, they've got precious little chance of winning most of them because they just don't score that many goals. On the flip side of that, Leeds put the end of a frustrating week behind them because they got a 2-0 win against Millwall. The early own goal helped them massively, and while they didn't create bundles of chances, not great ones anyway, lots of shots, very few on target, very few clear-cut opportunities, but they got a solid win, and that's what Leeds needed. All 3 of the teams below them drawing 1-1. Perfect midweek for them, and they restore their gap in the top 2 to 4 points. And it gets them back in form. But away from home, they've always got that little slip up in them. I'm not sure it's going to come this time because I don't think QPR have got the goal threat to take advantage. But we all remember what happened a year ago, don't we? When QPR won 4-0 in this fixture and virtually cost Leeds automatic promotion. I'm not sure the same's going to happen this time. I think Leeds are better prepared. And I think QPR will struggle for goals. So I'm going to go for the score that QPR have lost 3 of their last 4 by. And I'm going to go for Leeds to win at Loftus Road by 2-1. As we move on to the 3 p.m. kickoffs, starting with Blackburn Rovers versus Cardiff City. Blackburn at 4 without a win. It's been a tough old ride since Valerian Ismail came in. Defeated Derby and Stoke. Crushing ones really. And Blackburn's away record, while it's not been brilliant this season, are the sort of sides they've got to be beating if they do want to stay in that playoff race. They're now 4 points away, and they come up against a Cardiff side at home that are desperately looking over their shoulder. Now with the 2nd worst defence in the league, lost at home to Luton, who just don't win away from home. It was a really poor game of football, I've got to be honest. Both of them were, to be fair. Blackburn Stoke and the Cardiff Luton game. I obviously watched this one in full, and I've got to be honest, when from 1-0 up, you can't hold on to a lead against a team that doesn't score or win away from home. You've got to be concerned. Yes, the first goal was a moment of brilliance for Luton, but overall Cardiff just didn't do enough, and defensively, they didn't look particularly great. It's a really worrying sign for them, and both of these teams will be looking to get back on track because Blackburn need a win to stay in the playoff hunt. Cardiff could end up in the bottom 3 this weekend if they don't get a result. 3 league defeats in a row. Okay. You would say, if you take out Luton's form this year, 2 of the relegated sides and Sunderland who are 4th. Blackburn have had troubles, but it's largely been on the road. They picked up the point at home to Norwich, but then they're without the likes of Weimann, who've been so important this year. I'm not sure what to go for here. I don't see Cardiff scoring many. Do you know what? I'm going low scoring this weekend. Screw it. I'm going to go and gamble, and if there's lots of goals, I'm going to get a low score. Blackburn to win by 1-0 and plunge Cardiff into further trouble. Next is a battle of 2 of the top 6 and 2 sides that had a frustrating midweek. It is Coventry City versus Sunderland. Coventry, I took a little bit of stick for saying that Stoke had chances to win that game against them. Yes, Coventry should have had a penalty and whatever, but Stoke did have chances. There's no denying that. Well, the opposite really happened in midweek, didn't it? Again, I'm going to get stick for it. Coventry had more of the ball, more of the chances. They opened Derby up more times than Derby opened them up. But Derby had the best chances of the game. The clear-cut chances backed that up. The highlights backed that up. And unfortunately, Coventry's defence is going to let them down a little bit here. A 2-0 defeat, a goal conceded just after half-time is a real blow for them. They would have come out trying to get back into the game and then conceding almost immediately. Gave Derby something to cling on to. And unfortunately for Coventry, that is a big result in terms of clinging on in the playoffs. They were fairly fortunate in that Bristol City, Blackburn, etc. slipped up. Only really Middlesbrough gained that ground at the top. Whereas Sunderland, a 1-1 draw against Preston. I'll say it now, I think this might put them out of the top 2 race because both of the teams above them drew and they didn't take advantage. I think unfortunately that's going to cost them. In the end, they did well to get a late point out of it. Mundell coming along and saving the day. But Sunderland had brilliant chances, didn't take them. And unfortunately at the back, we've mentioned it before, they're okay, but they're not as good as the top three. So they need their attack to be informed consistently, and they didn't take their best chances of the match. What that does mean for me is that we've said it all season. I know Isidore's impressed at times, but they do need a consistent top championship striker. One more of them, and I think they could be real contenders again next year. Who knows though, the playoffs will be a lottery, and they've done brilliantly to secure that place already. So for this one, very hard to call. One side battling for the playoffs, one side probably thinking it's must-win territory for the top two. Sunderland are unbeaten in 3 and Coventry had been the form team in the division prior to that derby game. But I think Coventry at home will be aggressive and it suits Sunderland. They've got pace on the break. They're against a defence that have let in 6 in their last 3 against all poorer sides than Sunderland. I'm going to go for the visitors to win this one. I'm going to go by 2-1 to make it back-to-back defeats for Coventry. Next up, the game I'm going to be at, and a huge one at both ends of the table. It is Luton Town versus Middlesbrough. A priceless win for Luton makes it 2-3. Again, not a vintage performance, but a moment of magic from Jordan Clark. And a goal for one of the January signings in Thelo Asgard as well. It was just about winning. It closes that gap for Luton to 2 points to Cardiff, for 5 points to the likes of 19th place Stoke. It really was crucial, especially given all of the other teams in that bottom 3 won as well in midweek. For Middlesbrough, a very good win against QPR, an important result to keep them within 3 of the playoffs, and I still think they're the favourites for 6th place, even though they keep slipping up in front of goal. Yes, they didn't have their best performance, but we've seen Middlesbrough produce so many dominant displays and not take their chances. To have a game that was relatively even and to come out and win it, probably something that's a blessed relief for Michael Carrick. He'll take it. Middlesbrough have lost 2 of their last 3 away games, but against Luton, they're going to get chances. The question with Borough is always, are they going to have one of those days where they take them all or not? Luton need to win. They can't really deal in draws or defeats here. They've got to win probably 4 or 5 of their last 9 to make sure they stay in the Championship. I think that's going to be a tough ask against Borough, and although it's a result that probably helps neither, I'm going to go for my first Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. More because I want to see a result, if anything. So Luton 1, Middlesbrough 1. Into the second half, and with Luton's rivals travelling to a side that Luton probably need them to beat. It is Oxford United versus Watford. Oxford were 1-0 up and fairly comfortable against Hull City. Unfortunately, though, it all fell apart, didn't it? That turnaround, the Jamie Cumming error as well. 2 goals conceded in 4 minutes. And after that honeymoon start for Gary Rowett, they just don't look like winning a game. And it's the same sort of fixtures that they were struggling with under Des Buckingham when he got the chop a little while ago. Unfortunately, in a game where very little was created, Oxford came out on the wrong end of it. And after Cardiff, they are now the side that everyone's looking at to catch, just 4 points clear of the relegation zone and 6 points clear at the bottom of the table. For Watford, a really important result against Swansea. It wasn't vintage stuff, but a 1-0 win. Sissoko rolling back the years, the French international. It was a game that, again, could have gone either way, could have petered out into a 0-0 or a 1-1, but Watford snuck it. And at this stage of the season, you've just got to win those games and stay in the mix. They're 4 points off the playoffs, they're fighting hard, and you know what? Tom Cleverley's done a good job this year. I've said it several times. So for this game, we have to bear in mind that Watford have a pretty dismal away record. They did get a good win at Borough, though, and kept a clean sheet at Stoke. I'll go for them to keep another clean sheet. I think Oxford just need to pick up points. They've not won in ages, so I can't go for a win. I'm going to go bold. I'm going to go for a 0-0. As we move on to a big battle in the bottom 3, it is 24th v 22nd at Plymouth Argyle v Derby County. Plymouth with a crucial and unexpected win at Portsmouth, one which nobody predicted in the comment section. A goal either side of half-time and then clung on with 10 men late on to get themselves a priceless victory. It was all Pompey in that last part of the game. Plymouth didn't even manage 20% possession, but he did manage to get 3 points, which is all that matters at this stage. On the flip side of that, Derby have had a brilliant week under John Eustace. We said this would happen. He'd find some home form for them. They beat Blackburn and they've beaten Coventry, but can they find a way on the road? That has been the question all season for a side that's not got a huge goal threat, that isn't really capable of opening up on the attack and stopping goals at the other end. What are they going to do on the road against a Plymouth side that has just gained some confidence? We've seen that Plymouth have got a good home performance in them, but they are few and far between. For me, this game is an absolute stinker to call. I've yo-yoed between the two teams winning several times, and when that's the case, there's only one thing I can do. I don't think it helps either team, but based on my prediction for Luton, I'm going for all three teams in the bottom three to draw 1 goal apiece. I'm going for the Championship's favourite scoreline here. As we move on to Deepdale and Preston North End, who host Portsmouth, another side that might just look over their shoulder after that midweek disappointment. They'll be gutted to have lost the Plymouth game, but you can't give anyone a 2-goal lead at this level. And after a brilliant win against Leeds, it's sort of back to square one. With everyone winning in that bottom three and some of the sides just below them, the gap is only 7 points, and you never know at this stage. There's going to be another win needed somewhere. For Preston, a 1-1 draw at Sunderland was a pretty decent result. Got to say that they were the second best team. Sunderland had some brilliant chances to win the game, but Preston still carried more of a threat than they did under Ryan Lowe. So Paul Heckingbottom making that progress, but we clearly know, we talk about it every week, we know where the weakness is in that team. They've only scored 1 in their last 3, albeit they've played 2 of the top 4 in that time. And Portsmouth, we know they're rotten away from home. Yes, they got that big win at Oxford, but otherwise, they've not looked like beating a half-decent team on the road this year. Certainly not in the last couple of months anyway. So I'm going to have to go for a home win in this one. I think Preston are a fairly solid side, and I'm going to go for them to win this one at the weekend by 2-0 against Portsmouth. The penultimate game on Saturday sees us move to another side that might look over their shoulder. It is Swansea City versus Burnley. Frustrating midweek for Burnley in that race for the top 2, not taking advantage of Sheffield United's slip-up after a 1-1 draw against West Brom themselves. A late red card not helpful, but Zian Fleming did get them back on terms, and he's been a crucial part this season. And again, I know I got stick for it because I had the bold audacity to say that Burnley weren't great going forward after a 4-0 win. But my point is proven. Luton are just an atrocious defence on the road. Against a half-decent, disciplined defence, Burnley struggled to break them down. We thought Marcus Edwards might make the difference. We thought the fact they could rest Brownhill for half an hour might make a difference. But they're not quite there. They don't look like opening teams up. Ultimately, it could end up being a thing that cost them. We talk about Sunderland's defensive record, and I know Burnley have only scored 2 less than Sheffield United. But Sheffield United are scoring 1 or 2 every game. Burnley are scoring a 4 against a poor defence, and then none, and then 1, and then none, and then 1. And it's costing them results. Really worrying for me, but still another point on the board against one of the better teams in the division. And we look at their running and think, well, maybe they can sneak in there, because no one has really been flawless in trying to grab that. They keep the unbeaten run going, and they go to a Swansea side who had their first defeat under Alan Sheehan's interim management at Watford. A pretty even game. There wasn't much in it. Could have petered out, as I mentioned before, but only 1 goal conceded in 4 is a really impressive stat. And against a Burnley side who don't score many, doesn't bode well for an exciting game. Swansea, I don't think they're going to open up too much. They'll ask Burnley to break them down. Whether or not they can do it, I don't know. I'm going to go for one moment of magic. I'm going to go for a performance of a side that is befitting of promotion. I'm going to go for Burnley to win by 1-0. I don't think this will be a classic. And the final game on Saturday features the side that Burnley drew with in midweek. It is West Bromwich Albion versus Hull. Tony Mowbray starting to get going now. 5 undefeated, 3 1-all draws in that, but 2 of them away at Leeds and Burnley and the other away at Millwall. Their home games, they've found a way to win and keep clean sheets against both Oxford and against QPR. And although Hull have picked up form recently, have been more disciplined, you have to say that under Ruben Selles, you just feel West Brom might have too much. The away form isn't the best for Hull. They lost at Cardiff. They drew at Bristol City where they were clinging on for dear life with 10 men, albeit that's an extenuating circumstance. Their best performances, though, we've mentioned this on the road, they come against the top sides. They did brilliantly at Sunderland, brilliantly at Sheffield United. Are they going to shock the odds again? I don't think against West Brom I can predict anything other than a home win. But Hull got a crucial win against Oxford. They turned it around. Yes, it relied on a goalkeeping error, but it was a crucial win. It got them away from that bottom 3. But I'm going to go for West Brom to win this one. I just think at home they'll be too strong. I'm going to go for a standard West Brom 2-0 win. But Hull City, if they produce that display they did against the other top sides, you never know. They might be the surprise of the weekend. And we finish on Sunday lunchtime with the small matter of the Steel City derby. It is Sheffield Wednesday versus Sheffield United. A tight 4-1 the first time around, but this has been a story of 2 very different sides in recent weeks. Sheffield Wednesday have been pretty much goals galore at both ends. From 2 down, they came back and beat Norwich in midweek, battered Plymouth last weekend on the road, but actually It's their home form that suffered a little recently, albeit their 2 games were against Sunderland and Coventry, who are both up in that top 6. For Sheffield United, they've won 4 of their last 6, but they've not been vintage in any of those games. Against Bristol City again, conceded over 20 shots, weren't the best defensively, and in the end probably deserved to concede the equaliser. But is it the hallmark of a great side that, apart from the table toppers Leeds, they've not lost any of their last 6, despite the fact in most of those games they've been pretty average or worse? It maybe is a sign of a side that is destined for promotion. Chris Wilder's done a brilliant job rebuilding that team. Danny Rolt has been magnificent at Sheffield Wednesday. It's 2 managers in my eyes that will be up there in the battle for manager of the season, given the way they've produced their teams. I don't know what to go for in this one. There's a real part of me that thinks Sheffield Wednesday could nick this at home. I just think at the moment they're playing well with a goal threat. They're always going to give one up. But Sheffield United are finding a way to win is so hard to call. I can't sit on the fence like I have for most of this weekend. So I'm going to go for the home side to win. Sheffield Wednesday to upset the apple cart at the top with a 2-1 win at home to rivals United. So with that out the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for this weekend. And the headline news is very low scoring. I've got no one to score more than 2. I've got a 0-0 draw in there for Oxford v Watford. All of the bottom 3 to draw 1-1. And at the top of the table, I think Leeds, Burnley and Sunderland are all going to get a win. But if Sheffield Wednesday produce that win in the derby, it could be a very tough weekend for the Blades of United. Those are just my predictions though. Do you agree or disagree with them? I'm aware I've gone pretty bold this weekend. Let me know in the comments below and give us your predictions for Matchweek 38. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap when we return in just under 2 weeks' time to look ahead to the first weekend after the 2 weeks off. For now though, if you did enjoy this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it, subscribe and turn that notification bell on for plenty more action from the Championship. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the 2 weeks off. Go and enjoy some lower league and non-league football if you can. And we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks on Wednesday to look ahead to Matchweek 39.